Hi, this is Alicia Carter. This is my week 5. And the 4 questions, also excuse my voice because I am a little sick. But the 3 questions that I chose to do from chapter 4 were questions 1, 2, and 3. So, question 1 asks, describe the lack according to Prop in a situation comedy and tell how equilibrium is restored. So for me, um, lack is something that throws off the equilibrium and is needed to restore it. So anything like in the storyline that throws off, like the equilibrium of the plot, something that needs to be resolved in order, kind of like, your conflict resolution. What's creating a problem, what's throwing off the balance, and that is what needs to be restored in order to have a happy ending, so to speak. So an example of that I chose, like the sitcom that I chose to do was The Office. I just said, like, for The Office, there's really not a concrete story plot. Like the whole idea of The Office is it's like this behind the scenes look at the day to day lives of a paper company. But within that, there's various storylines. Like, for instance, Dwight's fight to be the manager, or the several different love stories between Dwight and Angela, between Pam and Jim, between Michael and Jan, or Michael and Holly. There's just lots of different love stories. So, and also like power being in the right hands. For instance, like whenever Michael um, chose to start his own paper company, and like in the several episodes that was like the equilibrium was thrown off because Michael wasn't in power, or whenever the company the company's management was in the hands of somebody else that necessarily wasn't right for the company. All of those episodes, the equilibrium was completely thrown off and it wasn't restored until power got back into the right hands. Um, Another example that I would say, like from a movie, would be like for Taken. The whole plot of Taken, like for the very first movie, is that this man's daughter is, taken away from him. So, the whole equilibrium of the story plot is thrown off because she is taken away from the family. And so, it isn't restored until the end of the movie whenever she's brought back to the family. So, that is another example, but in, a movie form. Question 2 asked to watch a drama, a reality show, or a soap opera and identify the enigma, the delay, and the resolution. I chose the show Dexter. Um, and I said that the enigma, I really don't want to be like a spoiler alert or anything, but I said that for the enigma of this show is ultimately, will everyone discover that Dexter is the serial killer? And that's not really like a spoiler. Like, we know, like, from the very first episode that Dexter is a serial killer. But we are the only people that knows. Like, nobody else in the entire show knows. Only the viewer knows that Dexter is a serial killer. Um, the delay, I would say, is, will Dexter be able to have normal relationships and continue to do what he does? Who will find out? How will they feel about it? Will his son grow to be like him? Those are the delays. Like, so those are also other various enigmas or delays that pop up throughout the show. Um, and then the resolution would be that Dexter hurts those that he loves with the truth, and he cannot function in a normal society, so he chooses to isolate himself. And this is the resolution because it solves the first enigma. Question 3 says to find an example of an action code, such as the one described in the Sopranos example, and describe how you sensed what was going to happen. So for that, I'm going to use Dexter again. Um, we know that Dexter kills the people who break the law that slip through the cracks. So like through the cracks of the legal system, of the justice system. So like murderers and rapists, like just people that do awful things like that, that he knows for a fact did what they did, but they were not convicted of their crimes. Um, so we know when he goes after a new person, almost every episode, that he is going to kill them. He's going to capture them some way, somehow, and kill them. But almost every kill brings out something new in Dexter. So like every kill is almost like a puzzle piece to who Dexter is, or it brings up a new problem or new, like it's not just like he kills somebody and then like it just doesn't fit into the plot at all. Like each kill serves a purpose into the bigger scheme of the plot of the story. And also every season there's a new serial killer that they're after that they usually don't like figure out that. Okay, so Dexter works on like a task force for Miami Metro Police, and he's like the blood analyst, so he's like all about blood and stuff. And he works on the task force with his sister and all these other people that work on the task force. And each season they're after a new serial killer, so like he's always after this big serial killer up here, but throughout that he's also after like the little people that slip through the cracks. But they don't usually figure out who the big person is, like who the big serial killer is, until the end of that season. There's just lots of murder, and there's murdering every episode, and each murder serves a purpose. But yes, um, not to mention that there is a new serial killer that the force is after every season, so that is also a big deal. That we get clues from throughout the season, and we know that Dexter is after them, but how will it go down? He kills them in the same ways necessarily, but capture is usually like pretty different, and sometimes like there's some hiccups throughout it, um, things like that. But action code, we know that Dexter is after the big serial killer, and we also know that Dexter is going to kill all these other people throughout the season. Um, so just in terms of like an action code, that's what we as the viewers know, because action code makes complex ideas and feelings immediately recognizable to the audience, while at the same time their significance becomes apparent in the narrative. So this requires the audience to understand the action code within the context of the narrative, which I think that we pretty much get the gist of that. Definitely within the first season, but for sure, like the first episode, like the first few episodes, like you pretty much figure out what the action code is for that entire series. Um, Thus becoming the co-author of the story. In other words, the audience senses what will happen next. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it all up. So those are the 3 questions that I chose to answer for the end of chapter 4 for my week 5 assignment. So here we are. Thank y'all. Bye.